Okay, after I finished watching Halloween 2018, I was very excited to dive in to Halloween Kills. I didn't know anything about this movie going into it other than having spent a whole year hearing from Halloween fans how much it sucked, how terrible it was, how god-awful it was, how much people hated it. And that only made me more excited to dive back in because I really enjoyed Halloween 2018. And since I had just seen it the night before, I was excited to see exactly what they were going to be doing with this as a way to kind of expand upon the story. I've always felt that when it comes to these slasher movies, having a sequel, especially having a pre-planned trilogy, is something that I'm like, you'd better have a message on. You'd better have an idea where you want to take this. Otherwise, you're just constantly retreading old territory. However, in this particular situation, though, especially dealing with something like Michael Myers, the fans, I think more often than not, want you to go back and to tread on previously worn territory. I just feel like they just want that. That's what they're comfortable with. Anything else is going to cause a massive, massive panic because horror movies are generally, in many people's minds, not designed to make them think. But I would disagree and say that in this particular case, this franchise is 100% designed to be a thought piece. It's very metaphorical. And that doesn't really kick off until you're watching Halloween Kills, which takes place immediately following the events of the first movie. The house is on fire. Michael smartly hides himself in the back part of the safe room where there was a metal grate where the guns were. The firefighters come down. He is able to take one out, uses another one as a way to get up, and then just unleashes pure hell on like a shit ton of firefighters, just eviscerating them as he's walking through the front yard of this house. It's a great scene. You start to really question like how strong he is. Like you start to question the idea is he possessed by the devil? Is he just a pure demon? Is he just pure evil? Like what is he? How is he this particularly strong? Like how can he do it all? And they don't really explain it, but they do hint at a couple things as you're going through the movie. From there, Michael goes and does probably one of the worst kills in any of these films. And I don't quite understand why. I know it comes up in Halloween Ends, and that's a little bit of a precursor for like that review. But when he goes over to the neighbor's house and he, knocks out the husband, or he kills the husband, and he takes a fluorescent bulb and he shoves it through the one woman's neck, and she is bleeding out, and you think she's going to die. She's bleeding out. She's unable to talk, unable to move. And she just watches Michael hoist her husband up, put him on the table, and just stab him repeatedly, grabbing a different knife, plunging it in, and rinse, repeat. And she can't do anything. She is powerless to watch this play out. And you think that is how she's going to spend her final moments. What really made me think in that particular scene was, why is he so brutal? He hasn't been this brutal in any other way. Is it Michael jacked up on adrenaline? Is it him in like just frenzy overdrive? Is this his version of a berserker mode, or is this like the come down? No idea. It was very weird. We also get introduced to a couple new characters. That would be, of course, Big John and Little John, which I'm going to talk about them here towards the end. And I thought that was a very interesting dynamic as well, at least in regards to how Michael responds to people. Kind of weird. But this particular story has more to do with how the town responds to Michael Myers, right? So we get to see Tommy Doyle, now played by Anthony Michael Hall. You see the nurse that survived the attack back in 1978. The other kids who were there that Laurie Strode was watching the night that Michael Myers slaughtered his way through town. We also get flashbacks to how the Haddonfield PD at the time with Deputy Hawkins encountered Michael and failed to kill him on that particular night. And this is where we start really seeing just how his evil influence has impacted the city. In Halloween Kills, there's a lot to do with PTSD, undiagnosed PTSD, untreated PTSD. There's a lot in this movie with the characters and how it impacts them. So as we go through the movie and we start getting more with Michael Myers and we start getting more with the city folk and how the mob starts to kind of rear its ugly head, Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode, has more of a minimal part in this movie. This movie is really about the town, and the town embraces the fear, if you will, by allowing itself to become evil, allowing itself to give in to those fears and to that anguish and that terror. And what it does is it causes them to effectively kill a guy, right? There's another escaped mental patient from the bus crash. He's out there at the hospital. He's seeking help. They see him. They see the white mental institution, garb on him. They think that's Michael Myers without the mask. They chase him down. And Karen, Laurie's daughter, realizes that this is not the guy. And Laurie's like, this is not the guy. We can't do this. Don't do this. But the mob had already decided that this guy was going to die. One way or the other, this guy was going to be lynched. And I literally thought that we were going to get that. I really thought that that was what was going to happen. But Karen ends up trying to get to him first. She convinces him to let her try to protect him. They lock him away in this hallway to keep both sides of the mob from getting to him. And she's trying to talk to Tommy Doyle. Tommy realizes that it's not Michael. But at this point, again, it's too late. Once those floodgates have opened, once that dam has broken, once the mob is there with torches and pitchforks, you cannot turn them down without there being some form of bloodshed that needs to happen. They need to see something in order to disperse. And unfortunately, they scare this man so much that he busts open his own window and he dives out and commits suicide in front of everybody. And at this point, they realize that, oh, that's not Michael Myers. And they've already kind of lost their own innocence in the evening. But from there, again, Laurie's talking with Hawkins, and Hawkins explains that when back in 1978, they were tracking down Michael. They tracked Michael back to the house in Haddonfield, his sister's home, where he committed his first crime. And that was where he was going. And that is where Hawkins encountered him with his partner. And when Hawkins noted, when the partner was taken hostage by Michael, Hawkins accidentally shoots him right in the neck, kills the hostage, or kills his partner. Michael escapes. Hawkins blames himself for it. But the sergeant says, to an effect, that the road to hell is paved in good intentions. You might have good intentions, but it can go to shit really quickly. And that's effectively what happened. Hawkins has always felt that guilt. He's always put himself in that position. He's always maintained that everything that followed was his fault. Laurie also blames that about herself. Everything that happened is her fault because they didn't act in the appropriate way. But it's also about fear, and it's about how fear controls us and how fear alters us and how we can give in to fear and not be the most rational people out there, and that mistakes can be made. Very much this movie is about how PTSD operates and how the town is responding to it. Now, I will say that the townsfolk in this particular movie, dumb as shit, right? That was my biggest complaint with Kills, was it just felt like everyone was really stupid, especially the woman with the Desert Eagle, who Michael kicks open the door and she kind of John Wicks herself. That was kind of funny, but everyone just felt like they were kind of okay, we're here, we're just cannon fodder. Because when you have a movie like this, it doesn't matter what message you're trying to send. If you don't have a high body count, people are going to complain. This movie definitely had a high body count, but when we get to the whole thing with Michael's key mission, his key mission is to get back home. It's not Laurie. Laurie was never part of the equation overall. She always felt that she was the key thing, that he was obsessed with her. He wasn't. He's an adult with the mind of a 6-year-old. All he wants to do is go home. Anyone who gets in his way is going to be taken out and taken to the wood chipper effectively. But really that was what he wants. And so when he goes back home, this is where he encounters Big John and Little John, who are a gay couple living in the house. They've refurbished it and everything else, and they deal with some trolls that night and whatnot. And then Michael shows up, and, Big John's like, I'm going to defend my property. I'm going to defend my man. And he ends up just getting killed. And then here comes Little John, and Little John just kind of stands there as Michael just kills him too. But then Michael does something that I find to be very interesting, is he takes their bodies into the next room. And he positions Little John sitting up and Big John's head on his lap, and they're playing jazz that the couple likes. He put on the jazz music for the couple. I don't know how he learned how to use a record player. Maybe it's something that he was able to do back in the 70s. But he set a scene for them as if he was allowing them to be comfortable in death. He brutalized the other guy. I still don't know why. But here he was gentle and caring with the people that he murdered because he was at home. Maybe it was a different mindset. It was a different vibe. But as, you know, everyone is kind of converging on the house, Allison and her boyfriend Corey, or not Corey, I forget her boyfriend's name. And like that guy's dad shows up, and of course that all goes to hell. And Allison is left trying to fight Michael. She gets injured. Karen then shows up with, you know, with the mask and lures him out. And this is what I loved, is she lures him out of the house with his mask, because the mask is effectively his safety blanket. So she lures him out, and then the town folk just mess him up. They just mess him up, and they tell Karen, go home, we'll take care of this. But she wants to be the one to drive the final blow into Michael. She wants to be the one to end it. And I understand it's been terrorizing her life since before she was born. She wants to make sure that he is dead. But you can't kill evil. And Michael gets back up and he brutally murders everyone there, goes back to the house. And as he's going back to the house, Karen walks upstairs and she stands where Michael is standing at the window looking outside. And it really has a lot to do with the reflection. Michael was just staring at his own reflection in the glass. And I think about looking in. I think that's what it was. A lot of it was about, like, you know, staring into the abyss and the abyss staring back. That Nietzsche quote, that will come into play later on. And then Michael appears, murders Karen, and that's where the movie ends. And it's this kind of like dramatic, dark ending, setting up the finale, setting up the final battle. And they kind of make it seem that it's going to take place that night. You know, like it's going to take place immediately following that. The town's going to regroup, track Michael down, and kill him. But Laurie Strode does say that it doesn't matter if it's tomorrow or next year, he'll be out there and we have to find him. And then the movie, of course, ends. We get the excellent, you know, end credit score. I mean, I could listen to the soundtrack all freaking day. I love it. But my thoughts on Halloween Kills was not one of like, this was terrible. I was like, I'm really intrigued to see what's going to happen next. I'm really intrigued to see just where we're going to go. And what happens with Halloween Ends, oh man, might have broken a goddamn franchise, but I don't think like that. And you guys can check out my review right now.